Well, let's start at the very beginning with things that we can at least get a little bit of a handle on as we work towards the basic theses that I know you espouse, and certainly we do also. And that revolves around the ancient visitors, okay? Now, in your opinion, how does the ancient visitors scenario figure into the UFO mystery that you discussed? And you took a lot of time in Chapter 2 going through many of these ancient visitors. And what's your take on this whole part of the dynamic?
Well, I can't really be candid. I can't speak much to the history other than there does seem to be a lot of historical allusions to the kinds of things we're talking about. Mark Eastman and his gang, I'm grateful for having waded through a lot of the New Age literature and so forth to cover that portion of the book. My primary focus has been the biblical side of it, and clearly the reason I think it's so relevant to all of us is because Jesus made a remark. He said that as the days of Noah were, so shall the days of the coming of the Son of Man be. Now, in order to understand what he was apparently alluding to, one needs to understand what the days of Noah were really like. And most people that study Genesis 6 and following, which deals, of course, with Noah and all of that, haven't really studied carefully what the text really presents. Strangely enough, the way it's usually presented in most seminaries is incorrect, is really a clouded perception. Because in Genesis chapter 6, most people miss the fact that the first two verses in the Bible are one sentence, even though it's broken into two verses. And so the point is, as you unravel that, you discover that what it is actually reporting is that the B'nai Elohim, that's a Hebrew term that is used in the Old Testament for angels, that some angels somehow with human women produced some hybrids. And those hybrids turned out to be very large, but that's another whole misunderstanding. The point is that it was the presence of these hybrids, if I can call them, corrupt human. They weren't normal human beings. That was the reason for the flood of Noah, because they had a gene pool problem, and that view of the text was the prevailing view by the rabbis in the Old Testament period. It was also the prevailing view of the early church up until about the 5th century. Now, that was a very embarrassing kind of construction. A lot of people thought that was pretty spooky stuff. And so they contrived a view saying, well, it really wasn't angels. It was the line of Seth commingling with the line of Cain, and they have a line of Seth story that tries to bury the realities there. And that's what's, strangely enough, that's what's taught in most seminaries. And yet there's about 18 contradictions that requires from the text itself. So one of the things that caused some controversy about our book when it was published, because we cling to the original biblical exegesis of that text, and that's been nowadays people who take the Bible really seriously are aware of that. But what's really surprising to many is the line of Seth argument. In fact, I got some very hostile phone calls, not hostile towards me, but people who were really angry because they had graduated from seminary. One of these was a major executive with one of the Christian publishing firms. He was really upset because he realized that the view I was presenting wasn't even presented in seminary. It wasn't as if here are two views and here are the arguments pro or con. Usually, when you get into a controversial subject in a competent seminary, you usually present several what the different views are, and then try to support the one you favor. Many people are upset because they never were even told about what I'll call the angel view, if you will, of Genesis 6. The line of Seth thing is a colorful story that has no scriptural support. In fact, it flies in the face of what the text really says in about 12 different points. So the point is that from a biblical point of view, something very strange was going on that led to the flood of Noah, and not just then, but has also happened since then, according to the text. And so that's what we really focus on, because that's the part where we know we're on sound ground because we're on biblical ground. And what comes out of all of this then is the presumption that we make, of course, is that the UFO thing may be an echo of exactly what happened back there in Genesis 6, and if so, the increasing prevalence of these UFO events may be a sign that we're moving into what classically is called the end times.